Let's take a deep breath, my friends. They are with us still. Thank you. As Maya Sarton wrote in her poem titled All Souls, the dead move through all of us, still glowing. I'm going to show you a slide. This photo is my paternal grandmother and grandfather. Irving, on the right, snuck into the United States illegally on forged papers, obtained at great risk by my great-grandmother Pearl. The paper said he was coming to visit his three brothers, Willie, Harry, and Sam, who had emigrated earlier to the US. Except they weren't his brothers, they were his cousins, and it wasn't for a visit. He stayed here permanently. Anna, on the left, met Irving early in her teenage years. Her mother, my great-grandmother Debra, who I am named for, sent Anna alone on a ship to come to New York when she turned 17. Anna never saw her mother again. Her three sisters died on a forced transport to a concentration camp. Their one brother was able to flee to Palestine. I wish I knew more about all of them. But what I know is that their genes run through me. I can't imagine how brave they must have been to leave their families and travel alone across the ocean in steerage to a land they knew nothing about. But surely I can feel their fear. I can't imagine their life on the east side of New York in a tenement, but I can imagine how resilient they must have been to reach a place where they could send my dad to a community college. I can't imagine what it must have been like in the 1930s and 1940s, watching the European war against the Jews, knowing that their relatives were being slaughtered. But I do know what it's like to watch, you know what it's like to watch disasters unfolding and how helpless that can feel. The study of epigenetics teaches us that family wounds are carried unconsciously from generation to generation. To quote, the stories and traumas of our grandmothers and grandfathers are our stories. Yet, surely epigenetics teaches us that their strengths are our strengths too. I know I carry my grandparents' fear in my very cells. And I also have to remind myself I carry their courage. Surely my commitment to the poor, to immigrants, to all those who are othered by race, sex, gender, religion, ethnicity, comes at least in part from the legacy of being their granddaughter, great-granddaughter. Now, they weren't social justice advocates, they were survivors. For that work, like most of us, I look to our mutual ancestors for social justice. When we think of civil rights, let us be emboldened by the lives of people like John Lewis, Rosa Parks, Fannie Lou Hamer, Bayard Rustin, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, Cesar Chavez, Mary McLeod Bethune. When we think about women's rights, Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, Betty Friedan, Shirley Chisholm, Bella Abzug. For LGBTQ+ rights, Harvey Milk, Sylvia Rivera, Marsha Johnson, Edie Windsor, Virginia Mollenkopf. Our UU social justice forebearers, Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, Clara Barton, Sophia Lyons Foz, Viola Liuzzo and Reverend James Reed, murdered in Selma for voting rights. Alandria Williams, the young trans activist who was the last moderator of the UUA, who died a few weeks ago at age 41. So I invite you to add into the chat box other names that I have inspired you for social justice. As I thought this past week of the swearing in of a new ultra-right Supreme Court justice, I thought about my clergy ancestors who worked on assuring women's reproductive rights before Roe versus Wade. And with memories of their courage, I committed publicly to sign up if needed to distribute medical abortion pills and to help women find the way to safe and legal surgical abortions in the states that have laws protecting them. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. The Clergy Consultation Service was started by the Reverend Howard Moody, a UCC minister at New York City's Judson Church. It grew out of a movement by clergy actually in the 1950s to protect birth control in New York City hospitals. And from 1967 to 1973, it grew to more than 3,000 clergy members across the United States, including ministers, rabbis, dissident priests and nuns, and many UU ministers. From 1967 until 1973, these clergy counseled and referred more than 450,000 women to licensed doctors to get safe legal abortion. 450,000. When abortion became legal in the United States, these clergy opened the first abortion clinic in New York State. Women clergy in those years would also call and go and visit doctors who were illegally performing abortions all across the country to make sure that the doctors were indeed licensed, humane, and qualified. These clergy also set fees for abortion providers around the country to keep the costs low, and they raised money from their congregations for airplane and train tickets to help women travel to qualified providers. With these clergy as my ancestors, how can I do anything else if Roe is overturned? My friends, we do not know what's going to happen this week, no less this year or the years ahead. But we do know that regardless of the outcome of the election, we will be called to act in the line of our social justice ancestors. Even if there is a blue tsunami, we are not done. We are not done advocating, protesting, donating, living our faith aloud. There is so much to be undone from the past 4 years. And there is so much further we need to go to be a land of liberty and justice for all. And if, as some fear, there is massive voter suppression or any attempt to delegitimize the election or not count the votes, the call for us as yous to respond will be faster. And I am counting on you to respond. The fact is, and you all know this, regardless of which party is in charge, America is far from being what it needs to be. The Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, the president of our association, wrote this: "We need to be all in for systemic change that puts people first, that sees racism, xenophobia, poverty, ableism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, voter suppression, and climate destruction as one issue, a disease we must all organize to address together. So much is on the line." End of quote. So much, my friends, is on the line. At this year's General Assembly Where lecture, climate activist Naomi Klein said this: "The future will be determined by whoever is willing to fight and organize harder for their vision." That needs to be us. Regardless, my friends, what happens on November 3rd, let me assure you, you will wake up on Wednesday, November 4th, and we will need to get up and take some deep breaths, wash our face, brush our teeth, have our breakfast, and get back to work. My colleague and friend from Westport, Connecticut, the Reverend Allison Patton, a UCC minister, wrote this on her Facebook page after the confirmation of Justice Homiy Barrett, and I asked her if I could share it. She wrote, "Tomorrow, I will return to the work of building beloved community, because no one ever said this would be accomplished in a season or even a lifetime. No one ever said we'd have the privilege of living through times less challenging, less harrowing than previous generation. No one ever promised us that democracy would continue on its own, unchallenged, or that we would reap its fruits without having to work like crazy to protect it and defend it. No one ever guaranteed that care and compromise would always overcome a lust for power, or that our higher angels wouldn't have a fierce battle with the forces of arrogance and greed. No one ever promised us it would be easy. Yes, some of us have known all along how tenuous it is, how many cracks have run through it, how far we have always been from the promised land. So tomorrow I set my gaze on the horizon in memory of those who fought fiercely to get us this far, in memory of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and John Lewis and so many determined, courageous others. I will do it because we must. She ends, because I believe in the fundamental beauty and worth of all people and this planet. Our Unitarian ancestor, the Reverend Theodore Parker, Unitarian minister and abolitionist, he lived from 1810 to 1860, and he kept a gun on his desk at his church because his life had been threatened because of his commitment to fighting slavery. He spoke the promise this way: I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eyes reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by my experience of sight. I just can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice. Martin Luther King Jr. adapted those words in his speeches, and President Obama had a rug made for them for his Oval Office. My friends, the arc does not bend alone. It never has. It needs us, and we need each other. We need each other to survive. And I can't think of anyone I would rather be doing this work with right now. You are made for this time. And I believe in us, the collective us, the us that is inspired by our ancestors. So may it be. Amen.